Welcome to Michigan Reimagined, a Spotlight podcast. And here's your host, Chris Buck.
So, most museums deliver interesting and thought-provoking content. It's what makes visiting a museum all worthwhile. Well, Michigan State University has taken participant engagement to a new level, utilizing what's called a CoLab Studio. Here to tell us more is the Education and Learning Manager of the MSU Museum's CoLab Studio, is Ms. Carolyn White. Welcome to the show, Carolyn.
Thank you so much.
Excellent. So, share with us a little bit about the mission of the MSU Museum and maybe how it differs from some of the other museums that our listeners may have visited.
Yeah, so the mission of the MSU Museum is really focused on facilitating and creating experiences at the nexus of art, science, technologies, and cultures. It's one of the oldest museums in our nation. So it was founded in 1857, which in and of itself makes it unique.
Right.
But in terms of, I think, the visitor experience, what really differentiates us from other museums is we're not just looking at a particular topic or subject area through the lens of one specific discipline, so specifically through an artistic or scientific lens, but we're really exploring themes and topics through where those disciplines intersect. So through art, science, technology, culture all at once. And so what I think that allows for is for visitors to really explore their curiosities about different disciplines, their interests in a really broad way.
Okay. So the MSU Museum is a big physical building that people enter in and pay admission and do that kind of thing. But the CoLab space, and now it's collaborator, right? It took me a minute to say it out loud to get the little double entendre you've got going on there. So collaborator for collaborator, right?
Yes.
And so CoLab is the nickname. So what is the CoLab Studio kind of within the MSU Museum? How's it different and kind of what does that mean?
Yeah, that's a great question. So a big part of, I think, realizing that interdisciplinary mission is about the CoLab Studio too. So we focus specifically on creating innovative kind of experimental programs within the larger museum space. So if you think about a museum just exploring different options, we're really focused on like what could be next for museums or what could the future of museums look like. And so the CoLab Studio was really built on what our predecessor was, which was called MSU Science Gallery. So we're really continuing kind of that thread of innovation and exploration within the museum, larger museum context itself.
And is it student or faculty run, or who makes up the people that are running the CoLab Studio?
Yeah, so it's staff primarily within the MSU Museum. So I mentioned the predecessor, of course. So a lot of the staff that work in the CoLab Studio specifically are from MSU Science Gallery previously as well. And then in terms of physical space, it's a little bit interesting in that the CoLab Studio is more about serving a function within the museum than a physical unique space itself. So it's about kind of that innovation and experimentation and kind of playing and breaking with things and seeing what could be next for like the museum as a whole as well.
Got it. Okay. And so being an academic institution, right, MSU, so I mean, most museums are just museums out in the world, and you're on a college campus. Are students maybe in certain disciplines kind of required to participate, or how does the student or faculty play into this officially?
Yeah, so one of our main values within the MSU Museum and the CoLab Studio specifically is that idea of co-creation. And so we're really focused on building experiences with our communities, not just for our communities. And so students, faculty, staff, of course, play a major role in that. And I think one of the main ways for students to get involved that we have is through our collaborator program, which is really, it's about a lot of different things, but is really focused. Collaborators are undergraduate or graduate students that are focused on facilitating dialogue and conversation with museum visitors, among other things too. So the main space that you will see that group of students in the museum spaces, in the exhibitions, engaging visitors with dialogue. They don't do it in the way, sometimes when you visit museums, you see docents.
Yep.
And so they're not exactly docents in that they don't have a script. They don't have a particular way that they're guiding visitors throughout the experience, but really we encourage them to bring their disciplines, their areas of interest, their curiosities into their dialogue with visitors, and to also let the visitors' interests in dialogue shape that as well. So it's a really interesting, robust experience for them in the gallery space. And then students also contribute in other ways beyond that, particularly the collaborators. So they might be producing podcasts or social media posts. This year for 1.5 Celsius, they're making a zine. So there's a whole variety of ways.
A
zine, yeah.
What is that?
So a zine is just kind of a written publication. It has playing off of magazine too, but it's less formal than kind of a structured design publication.
Am I just showing how old I am, or is that a new thing?
I don't know the exact history. It's been around for a little while, but it's not the most common of terms.
Alex, have you ever heard of a zine? Okay, good. He does. He's much younger than me, and he's never heard of it. Okay, so it's not me. Excellent. All right, so you got the 1.5 degrees Celsius. You threw it out there, which is great because that's where we want to talk about, right? So that is the current, do you call it a program or exhibit? Or
an exhibition.
Exhibition.
Yes.
Okay, so the current exhibition is 1.5 degrees Celsius. Tell us how long it runs and what is it meant to provoke?
Yeah, so 1.5 Celsius is our exhibition that really explores the global climate crisis and the impact that humans have on the environment. It runs until the end of February, and it's in our main gallery space. Admission, of course, to the MSU Museum is free, so people can just register online and stop by and see it.
But you should register.
Yes.
Okay, got it. All right. So what would a participant, how long has it been running? Because it's live now, is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
It's been running since September. So we opened kind of in correlation with the new semester at MSU.
Got it. Okay. And we're recording this kind of mid-October of 2022. So it's running from September through February of 2023.
Yes.
And you can register online. What's the website, or how do you register?
It's museum.msu.edu is where people can register.
Got it. Okay. And how long should a participant or visitor expect to stay? Is that a couple hours, or is it
question? It depends, I think, on what they want their experience to be like. So I mentioned, of course, the collaborators that are working in the space too. And we've certainly had instances of people spending hours just kind of engaged in conversations with students there.
Right.
Other people, I think, just kind of go through. And one of the things I like about the way that we approach exhibition development and having the collaborators around is it gives, I think, the visitor a lot of agency around what they want their learning experience to look like, what they want to explore, how deep they want to get into a subject matter. So I think it's a little bit up to the visitor in that sense, too. Okay.
Kind of like a regular museum, right? You can just kind of blow through, or you can read every panel on the wall kind of a thing. So is there much interaction? I mean, obviously you said you've got people that are there that can talk with you about it, but what would they actually see?
Yeah, so within 1.5 Celsius, we have a range of works. So a little bit, I guess, about the history of how we put together these exhibitions is it's designed through an open call process. So what that means is we put out a call about a year before we launch an exhibition, and anyone is welcome to submit a work related to a particular given theme. So in this instance, it's climate change. So we'll have works by students, we'll have works by researchers from other institutions, from researchers from Michigan State University. So it's a really kind of collaborative, community-driven way of producing an exhibition. And then in terms of this specifically,
easy for you to say.
I know, specifically within 1.5 Celsius, there's a couple, I think, different sub-themes and threads that are explored in the pieces. So there's a lot of works that deal specifically with the relationship between humans and nature. So we have a piece that's called Community Bee Clinic that's about, like, if you find an injured bee, what are the processes for healing kind of pollinators, which are really important, of course, to climate and climate impact. There's other works that examine kind of the future of what do things look like if we either don't address the climate crisis or if we do a good job of kind of slowing climate change down. So there's some that are a little bit more dystopian. One of my favorite works is there's a piece called 1.5 Degrees of Concern, which is a narrative recording of looking at 20 years in the future, 50 years in the future, after kind of speculative natural disasters that are caused by climate, and what life is like for kind of these characters and narratives in there too. So there's a whole range of, I think, ways that it's looking, going back to that interdisciplinary nature of it, of ways that people, artists, scientists, researchers have chosen to explore this theme. Right.
And so because it's all kind of, I mean, science and research, like you said, but there is a certain level of speculation, right? I mean, so I would imagine that this exhibit will have kind of conflicting this is one person's research and study that says that it's going to go this way, another person's going to say it's going to go that way. So you're not really trying to, like, the goal of this is not to definitively say this is what's going to happen and here are the solutions to get it done. It's really just a collection of a lot of different science and researchers' opinions on things to spark awareness and different scenarios and what you can personally do and what the effects are, and just have people walk out there with their brain full and hopefully going back home to try to make their own personal impact on this change. Mm-hmm. Is that pretty clear?
I think that's a great way of summarizing it too. Okay. I think what we hope people are going to take away from this exhibition experience is, like you said, Chris, that awareness of, like, this is what's happening and here is how I see myself kind of addressing or contributing to these issues.
Right.
One of the things I think that's our ultimate goal is having people walk away with thinking about, okay, what are some new ways that we address environmental and the social issues connected to environmental change, and how are the ways that we can imagine a little bit more of a sustainable future and work together towards that, while also thinking individually about how you act on that.
Which is great, right? Because it's the blend of, I mean, any museum is going to give you content to reflect on and appreciate and think about when you're gone. But this is affiliated, obviously, with an academic institution. So it's a really nice marriage of we're in the business of creating thought, right? And having people think differently and deeper and get better educated, literally, about whatever discipline they're studying. So it's fascinating to me. So how's the response been? I mean, is it a packed house, or are you still getting the word out? I know it's kind of early in the whole session, but...
It's been great. I think we've had larger groups coming through. We've had smaller groups coming through. So I think we're getting a decent amount of traffic. We're excited to see that too. And what I think has been interesting for us, or one of my favorite elements about the design of the physical exhibition space too, is we started with these quotes that we gathered from the students that we work with and that are in our communities too, about, like, what are they most worried about, or what are they most hopeful for when it comes to discussing climate change? Because as we know, that's an immediate issue for all of us, and particularly I think young adults think about, like, what is the world I'm going to live in look like in a number of years. And so we gathered these quotes from students, and there's these projections on the wall that are our students' words and quotes about what is concerning them or what they're looking forward to in the future. And then we also played with that in the exhibition space too, and visitors can kind of write their thoughts to similar prompts on those words too, and then have their words kind of added into the projections that are on the wall and the design and the conversation. So it's been interesting for me from an education manager perspective too, to see what are the things that people are taking away from this exhibition. Like, we know what we want, but what are some of the reflections that they're having too? And so I think you see some of the things you'd expect to see of, like, I'm worried that there is going to be no future, or I'm worried that I'm going to not be able to get any of the resources I need, or that I won't be able to enjoy kind of these natural spaces that I love and care about. And then there's also that hopeful lens too of, this is what the future can look like. I'm hoping that people will come together, that this will kind of be something that brings us together, and that we can work towards a brighter future. So it's been really cool to see those reflections come to life as well.
Right on. So you mentioned putting out the call and just kind of getting the content, a year in advance, and start getting things in to have in this particular exhibition. But are there other support that you receive, or other partners that help you put this together? I mean, do you get sponsorships? Are there other community, like, companies that help back all of this, or is MSU kind of do this on their own?
Yeah. So, of course, in terms of the design of the exhibition, we work with an exhibition designer too. We do RFPs to see who wants to kind of do the physical exhibition space. But in terms of more long-term support, I think an organization that has been immensely supportive of our work, both when we were MSU Science Gallery, and the museum's kind of mission and vision as a whole, is MSU FCU. Okay. So they've contributed significantly, and we've always really valued their support, and obviously a lot of that isn't possible without it too. So they've been a really great advocate and supporter of our work.
Got it. Okay. And just as a thought, is there I mean, it seems I'm very excited about going, right? Because I'm learning as much as I'm setting up this interview. So I will plan to go maybe even this weekend
Absolutely.
if I can get in. But is there a way for someone who, I've got relatives that listen to this, this podcast out of state. Can they go online and get even a taste of what 1.5 degrees or 1.5 Celsius is about? Because, I mean, if someone's in Oklahoma or Pennsylvania or New York or wherever, and they're not going to come to the actual museum, it seems like in this world of Zoom meetings and, hopefully post-ish pandemic, it seems like a lot of that content might be deliverable, digitally. Is that available yet, or is that?
Yeah. So, I mean, on the museum's website currently, there is just the quick write-up too about what 1.5 Celsius is about. There's a summary of a lot of the works that are in the show itself. But I think over the upcoming weeks too, goes back to kind of where the collaborators come in as well, is they'll be producing kind of blog posts that are interviews with exhibitors, things like that. So there's other ways, I think, content coming soon too, for people to experience that as well.
It's fantastic. I'm really excited to check it out. So we've been talking to the Education and Learning Manager of the MSU Museum's CoLab Studio, Carolyn White. Thanks for telling us about 1.5 Celsius. It's fantastic.
Yeah, thanks for having us.